continuing, and it's really not.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's,
And another question is, what effect, did the media have on this? Is the media now that it's actually gone away, is it included in both the cost and the incomes?
well, I would defer to Debbie and to Tim on that, because the numbers, they were the ones that made the numbers. My assumption is yes. I mean, legally, they're already in the pool, but I think I know that answer.
That's the income column of the cost.
That's that at this point, they all go in. I mean, assuming that I'm correct, they would all go into the same pot. So we wouldn't really know that this house or this community or this subdivision is making the grade or covering their costs. We really wouldn't know that because it all goes into the same pot.
Okay.
We wouldn't be tagging it anymore.
So, we should have known that before. We should have known what they cost them.
Right.
And we saw what our income went up.
In some accounts,
Just giving it a few percent changes,
right.
We should have had some idea whether it's covered.
Right.
Because if I remember correctly, the meeting used to rent the services from the Union Township fire station,
Right.
back down about Buxton. The problem, are they doing that now? I don't know.
No.
Yeah. So we're supplying that. But is it costing us more than 300 grand that they used to pay?
I don't qualified. I don't think so. I think that it is an expense that we have. I know some of our accounts, they were upside down. Particularly when we were talking about the waste levy, but then when the new waste levy came in, then it kind of leveled things out.
Okay.
I think for that piece, some of it, like, we can't figure out, like, it's obviously an increase in run for us,
Right.
which there's a cost to. The supply comes, the kind of the behind the scenes cost of the added piles, the wear and tear, additional oil changes, that there's really no way to correlate on it.
So I'd like to comment a little bit to your strategic comment, which I think is important. You can't go for something when, it just been asked for a tax increase more or less based on school levies and obvious house value increases, right? Because those are what drives most people's taxes more so than the township and anything. But people don't really get it. They just look at their overall tax bill, right? And they're like, oh, we're paying too much. I'm not going to put police levy. And I get that. I do. But that's why, I mean, that's a good point. And we can't look at these levies in a vacuum. You can't look at them just independently, because eventually we have to strategize out. We're going to need the fire, we're going to need other things, right? And we can't just put them all off and ask for them all at once, or people aren't going to go for it. Your point was well taken. At the same time, I also would think a little bit though, I wouldn't underestimate the people in Pierce Township support for the police department. I mean, I think that has been unwavering since I've been here. I mean, I understand the apprehension to ask for too much money too quickly, but I mean, I've heard nothing but positive stuff, and I feel like a lot of it is education too. There could be an educational element to letting folks know as to sort of what our police department's needs are, what their current facilities are like, how we would like to improve some of that. And if you really want to continue to have top-notch level service and top-notch level responsiveness, then you're going to have to pay for it. And then, by the way, all these increases too, another part of that educational piece, the reason why I'm not a huge fan of getting on board with advocating school levies, is because the school levies are going to take up a huge chunk of that tax increase. And then it drives people's taxes up in addition to the home value increases. And we can't get the money we need for our police department because the taxes are getting driven so high by other levies.
One of the talking points to doing the levy, and I agree with Stan, issue is not being able to do it without all comments. But when the police levy was issued in 2007, we worked on the levy and going out and giving people information. That levy was initially, they thought would only last 10 years. Now it's in the 15-year mark, which I think is a good selling point for the people to say how diligent the township and the police department were on keeping their costs within their working. But it's 15 years, and originally they thought it would only last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
But I think agree with Stan and with most of you, that this year is not here to put a levy on, maybe it's spring next year.
Do we know if Claremont, we have any information from Claremont, West Claremont? On what, if anything, they're planning as far as,
I
I
haven't seen or anything definitive,
mean, they've obviously been,
but
Kind of.
yeah, I think there's some groundwork.
making some preparations, yeah.
It's a good point. I mean, not a word our attempts if they throw out a levy at the same time.
Right.
Right. But
Exactly.
people aren't gonna vote for two things at once.
It would be very unlikely.
But the very little of the township is in West Clinton schools. The bulk of the township is in.
It's probably pretty close, it might be the opposite,
It's, yeah,
geographically speaking. I don't know about property tax value, but,
geographically, I think he's probably right about geographically. But population wise, it's probably.
Density.
It's more in West Claremont.
Well, because, we're going to get soft when you remember,
Mhm.
because the,
I think that's off again.
although the Monroe, the Zimmer power plant closed, so their school costs are gonna, way exceed their, income.
But there's some hope because the word on the street is that they may have worked out a deal. To solve some of that. And the biggest problem was that the Zimmer power plant folks were expecting to. Claw back some of the tax increase that they were hit with over the last few years. That's not gonna happen now, as I understand it. So that should level them off a little bit. And I don't know that you're gonna, if you see a levy from New Richmond, it's probably gonna be a smaller levy, but that may have been pushed back a few years because of that. But again, all of this is speculation. We don't really know what those schools are gonna do. And to Nick's point, they need school buses and they need teachers, but we need to build the roads to get them there and to their schools and the police and fire to keep them safe while they're there. So there needs to be some sort of a good balance, and it's not always that way. So,
Well, they're gonna drive home the point of facilities, their facilities, at least some of those that serve our township. And I went to some of those meetings, they're pretty out of date and in dire need of replacement, they're not repairable. So I have a feeling that they're gonna really push that part of it, at least for the Pierce Township part of their district. I don't know anything on timing either, but I have a feeling it's gonna be sooner rather than later.
so as far as the levy is concerned, what would be helpful to me is to have a sense of, what are the numbers that are associated with a replacement, the numbers that are associated with a renewal. If there is some sort of, I just would like to see just that baseline at the moment. So that I have some idea, what that looks like, whether that covers our costs. And then see if, what we can do or what we need to do beyond that, because those numbers may not even come close. We're exceeding expenditures about $870,000 a year with revenues, and that's
So renewal ain't gonna cut it. The renewal isn't gonna cut it, is that what you're saying?
generally where you get the increase is going to be in a replacement. So the replacement captures, the full amount of the new growth. And that's what I'd like to see what that is. Because then you're not really increasing the levy amount, you're just increasing the pool. The pool gets bigger. Does that make sense?
Makes sense.
So I'd like to see, that's what I want to know. It's probably not, but then we go from there. And so I'd like to know what that, if that makes sense. I mean, I'd like to know what those two numbers are versus what, what our new expenditures are. What is how much do we generate per on a 1 mil? How much do we generate off of an individual house? I think it's like, anyway, that's what I'd like to see those numbers and see if we have to go with an increase, if we don't have to go with an increase, and then that'll let you get some.
Intuition tells me you probably have to go in and increase, and might as well just move right to step 2 and figure out how much that increase might be. Perhaps, if we.
So that's
step
what
one
this
yields that-
helps us with
I
that.
understand, but if step one yields that that's not gonna be sufficient, right? And we could just,
That's my point.
he can move straight to step.
Yeah, I mean, he can
Figure
give
out
us some
those.
options, yeah, so it's like, this would be a renewal replacement, 1 mil increase. If you want to do it that way, I mean, that works,
Yeah, just trying to expedite things.
yeah, that works, it makes sense.
We're thinking that it would be a 10-year again, like it was back in 2007. Because obviously.
I think we'd make it.
It's like an airplane, right? We have to kind of start high the first 2 years and then you start.
I think you're gonna find that it's, the state's gonna require us to do a continuing, so we'll just do a continuing levy. And then see how many years we can get out of a continuing levy.
But your target would be 10 or 7, or what would be the target? Because that's obviously not have a lot to do with what the rate, the mill rate.
I think 10 makes
10
the
for
most
stability.
sense, because it's mathematically, I don't want to do a 5, it's too short, 10 is better, and I don't think with 20 would make any sense.
As an interim thing, could we cancel the 2 tips that we have remaining? The present place, and I think the Baltimore one is still valid, and how much would they generate?
Well, not, I mean, when you're looking at TIFs, they're not really, there's a belief that they dig into the cost of public services, and they really don't. What they do is that when you have the pilot, those houses that are inside the payment in lieu of taxes, if you have that pilot in place, those houses are paying into the pilot, which comes straight to Pierce Township. So like in the case of Prestwick, we did a 1075 TIF, which means that the township gets 75%, and then 25% goes to the traditional, 25% goes to schools, goes to, police and fire. In the case of Prestwick, it was a CAUV property. So we were only getting taxes off the 2 acres where that house actually sat. So in the end, it really wouldn't do us much good. We're gathering more money off of the pilots than we would if we tossed it back into that. In the case of the Walmart TIF, that could be a place where we could find some cushion to try to help, the departments. And we've had some discussion about sitting down and talking about amending that TIF, because the TIF was made in 96, I think. It was a 30-year TIF, and so it's approaching the end of its life. So if it ends naturally, I mean, we're at a point now with that particular TIF, where if you let it end naturally, you're gathering more than you're probably going to get off the taxes. And so you just let it sit and grow, or we go in and we amend it and take some of that surplus and put it where it needs to go.
Sure, we could use something like this fund, but we do need to come up with a plan.
No,
These levies
right.
as well, because it can only get you along. And again, my game theory over time is that you can't put off the police levy too long, because then all of a sudden the fire is gonna need money. And then all of a sudden they all come to do it once, and we can't ask people for that amount of money.
Well,
And Craig, you've experienced that. I mean, you've experienced the offput of expenditures, and as you have, chief props to that. But you put things off too long and they all come to a head, and you only ask people for so much money so fast. So we need to figure out what our most immediate need is, and sort of, in my opinion, what we're gonna go for, and that we can get. We want to go for it and not get it. We don't want to wait too long. 'Cause
No,
we're
I
gonna
don't.
End up with just a massive off-put stuff, and maybe it's somebody else's problem someday, but it's still not the right thing to do.
No, and I don't think that was certainly not what I was suggesting. What I was,
No,
I
don't
was
think
just
that's what
answering
you're
the question.
suggesting. I was commenting.
Yeah, and I totally,
Discussion.
but I totally agree with you. I think we need to pinpoint that date that we're going to do this. We could, like I said, utilize some of those TIF funds to, if we've got an issue with the police fund, if we have to do it in March of 25 or November of 25, that may be where we get the cushion, doing some of those creative things to get us by. But I do think you're right. I think we have to do this police levy. That's got to be job one. I mean, you can see the red ink. So that has to be done. It did, for some reason in my head, I thought, so the waste levy looks like it turns into a pumpkin in 27. And I thought,
We thought initially it was going to be able, it was going to go similar to that. It was going to turn down. But
And it
the
could.
estimate from the auditors I mentioned for the tax revenue, property tax revenue coming into that is much higher than.
For the waste levy,
For the waste levy.
let a war go off in the Middle East and the gas prices.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
And that is, it would be eaten up in just that one thing, the gas surcharge.
I would
So,
like to clarify one thing if I could, because I've been looking at numbers all day and it's starting to drive me crazy. But the big increase there in the sheet that we have here of other salaries, 254,103. 148,000 of that is attributed to a one-time grant that we got where each officer got 10% of their salary as a retention bonus. So that was put in that fund and then it was reimbursed through ARP funds. So part of that 254,103 is at 148,000, and then there was a 2.85% increase in salaries from the previous year. That makes part of the union contract.
so that just a little bit more cushion, but.
You're right.
The only other piece of this is, and this would be, I guess, for further discussion with the board, but, you know, as we go through the process of the facilities analysis and kind of figure out what the board wants to do. And clearly, we know the facilities we have are too small and woefully inadequate to be able to provide service to the community at this point. But we've still got a few months to go, to Kelly's committee before we get to that point, but you know, there's going to be some unit costs with that, whether it's addition and renovation of the existing building or whether it's something else. So keeping in the back of my mind, I don't have anything I can put on this as an estimate at this point, because I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but there's going to be potentially, if the board wants to move forward with that, some additional costs, probably in terms of bond debt, to be able to deal with some of our facility situations.
So basically, at the end of the day, in the end of this discussion, I mean, we pretty much know that we're pretty much feel like we're not going to be able to do it this year, right? A police levy,
I think that's too late.
but certainly too late to be on the March ballot, but it's still not too late to get onto the November ballot, if that's what we so choose. I mean, we'd have to put all the. Okay, politically, yes, but mechanically, that's all I'm working on right now. Because we'd have to turn in the paperwork in July. So we would have to have something, we would have to pass those.
Claremont goes for some huge increase in the spring, it'll seem brilliant.
What's the political drawback of doing it in November?
Because I think with the property taxes that just got swept. And then with it being a political, presidential election, that's a big thing too, that always has some effect on me.
I think you,
To the negative, you mean,
Right.
typically.
I see your point, but my concern is with what the state did too,
And I'm not on one side of it,
Fine.
I'm just offering, fodder
for discussion, yes. My concern would be that you're right. We're not all done digesting that increase. And so, I mean, I guess I would be concerned about, some backlash because of that and not, if you give it to the spring of 25, then you're in a little bit better spot.
I think it'd be a good idea to get on the ballot before the school levy.
Or after it.
No, well,
I agree with.
Yeah, the
think
before
before.
has, but the thing is, we don't know when
We
it is.
don't,
no, we don't
but if we
know.
went in the spring of 2025, you just,
The likelihood is that they would do spring of 25.
well, we can't go for
Uh,
that. But keep putting this off.
I mean,
And
you're
I
getting rid of
don't know if.
Close.
I think you underestimate this community support. for the police department. I understand the macro drives on some of this too. But it's gotta be done at some point.
We
You
just,
think we should do it in November?
I don't necessarily have a strong opinion at the moment. Just trying to think out what's best, and we can't, we start putting it off past the spring too, and let's.
timing wise, we would have to collectively decide we wanted to do something like that by probably no later than May, because you have to do 2 readings. So we'd have to do the May meeting where we would read the need,
And then
and then the June meeting where we would do it again. So,
the procedure,
so that's when we. That's, I mean, so that, we would have until then to actually pull the trigger.
But I think like Nick said, I think there's pretty widespread support for public services in this township. That's been the tradition. And I don't think it'd be as much of a hard sell as maybe a school levy. I think that would be a little bit of a tougher sell currently. But based on prior levels of public support, I think people are gonna want to maintain current levels of staffing and services. I don't think it'll be that much of a tough sell in this environment. People here are public safety oriented. That's why they came here. And I think they want a certain level of service, like what they're getting. So I'm a little more of an optimist, but I don't see it. I would agree. I think there's more value put on that in this township. So.
That being said, could we get some more solid numbers as to what exactly we need, and then maybe reconvene, like sooner than later, discuss this again?
I think that's the next step. I think that's the next step, is then we can make if we're looking at real numbers in February, we're way ahead of the game, I think.
Well, it shouldn't take too long to get some of that stuff hammered out, and should we sit back down and do another? Is it another work session necessary, or should we?
I think it should be a work session. So that way we're just focused on nothing but, plus we didn't, I don't think we broadcast this one, so it might be nice to broadcast a deeper dive.
Who's got our handy thing there? If anybody wants it, they can make the records request and come in here and get a flash drive and plug it in the
I
computer.
think we want to make things real easy.
So, should we set a date?
Yes. How long do you think it'll take to crunch the numbers?
Well, I'm gonna have to have a little bit of help from the auditor's office on that, so a little bit as contingent upon that, you have a little bit of time to sit down and run through this.
Now we go again, we're back in here on the 14th. You want to do it after the 14th to give you,
Like I said, probably like
you going to do a week of the 26th sometime?
What about the 26th? This time, same time?
I don't know.
Mhm.
Sounds good to me.
I'm not available if that concerns.
Okay.
No, I don't think we need a lawyer for that. Unless it gets way out of hand.
I just want to,
Just wanna
prepare
get
you
that
guys in advance for that.
I'm gonna mourn. I'm
I
gonna
know you're
grieve
gonna
for a
miss
little
me,
bit,
so.
but I'll struggle through that.
So we'll shoot for 5:30.
Yeah.
Maybe we can zoom in or something.
Yeah.
Maybe.
From like a kid's sporting event.
Have another meeting.
All right.
Well, we lost Tim, so
We're going to go into executive session.
not quite yet. Let's see what Tim is gonna come back with. I don't know why he left, but he did.
I did, wait, I met with Superintendent Adams back in December, maybe, about something unrelated. We had that discussion. They're kind of going through the same thing with their facilities, making it kind of trying to figure out what direction they're going, and I told her.
26 at 5:30.
So we want to be in this.
They had very right. I'm sorry.
You need to check your third cell phone.
Merlin is an example. Man, that place is a dump.
Yes.
What's that?
Yeah, 5:30.
Is that right? Okay.
Okay, so now we're gonna move into executive session. I don't have the thing to read. What's that?
Would you like?
Fire away.
I request a motion to adjourn into executive session is permitted by the Ohio Revised Code section 121.22 G3 to discuss imminent and or pending litigation.
Do we have a motion? We have a second. We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. Campbell.
Yes.
Mr. Kelly.
Yes.
Mr. Freeman.
Yes, it's doubtful that we'll come back and have an action. It's always possible, but it's doubtful.
Yeah.
What's for dinner?
Well, it's like-
Because I was gonna determine how fast we get done with the executive session. It's not gonna get me to make that meeting quicker.
I've got a prime rib special at the Stonehouse tonight.
Can you buy one? We always get one.
I don't know what the special is, but they have such good food. But they're struggling. They're still struggling.
You're such a mess.
Oh, I know.
Funny stage.
Choose mine. I'm gonna make you. Let's get my opinion. It'll always be here.
Yeah, that's right.
Were you sharing the, and that's why you're the logical choice.
He was super involved in the fire levy too. Both of them were super involved.
That's what.
Critical elements.
To try and make sure that there was no.
So, you got years.
What did the big salt on that wood? For that clear. Some can be enough.
I have no idea.
Nothing. So. With fraction orange and green lines, and they John Lennon did it up in the back.
So
That's actually, it was good, though, wasn't it? So, and smooth about that.
I didn't know this. I didn't want to go with the data side.
Right.
And I lived at an intersection in my neighborhood. Like, it's a big, wide, T intersection, and it was that everything on the shells. I said, "Oh, bucket liner, you know, they shovel it up, and then the next time it's there, they put their salt back down. And for years.
See, I don't know whether this was township or whether it was town.
It can be, but.
Yeah, I mean, if they're longer, man, got stuff, or maybe got clogged or something, they should let it
Yeah.
in. Or road, it is, oh, and it's still.
Okay, we'll see you later.
See, ya next time.
Did they?
I don't know. I don't know.
He's the only one. See you.
Yeah.